Do you ever find yourself waiting for a change that will make things easy again? Do you keep thinking, if I could just make it through the weekend, things will slow down? Or if my husband would just make this one little change, I would feel like I could breathe again. If my kids would just listen, I wouldn't feel like I was about to snap and lose my mind every single day. If the joy in your work or your home seems to have dissipated and you're doing your best to just patiently wait for that unanswered prayer to be answered, stick around. Today, we are going to walk you through the basics of finding your joy again. And this is a joy that you don't have to wait for. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Persistence in Prayer podcast hosted by Catholic mindset coach, wife, mother, educator, and speaker Kylie Haugen. Kylie is passionate about helping you deepen your relationship with God through the power of prayer. This podcast is a space for high achievers who want to do it all, but also want to prioritize their spiritual life and grow in faith. Join us as we explore the beauty of persistence in prayer and the transformative impact it can have on our lives. Get ready to discover practical tips, insights, and inspiration to help you develop a daily prayer practice and cultivate a deeper sense of trust in God's plan for your life. Let's journey together towards a more fulfilled and faithful life as we invite the Holy Spirit in. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I am joined by Nichole Haugen. Nichole is a cradle Catholic wife and mom to 6 girls. As a registered nurse for over 10 years, she found herself struggling with stress and overwhelm day in and day out. She always believed that if she could just change her shift or have more help, or if her kids would just listen, then things would get better. Yet, as each area began to improve, the stress and overwhelm was still lingering. Then Nichole found life coaching and learned that it was in her power to eliminate the crushing doubt and anxiety that she was not enough. Now Nichole is a coach herself and the podcast host of the Catholic Nurse Coach. She's here to share with us how we can better care for our bodies, our mind, and our soul so that we can keep going when we feel like we're failing at mom life, wife life, and work life. Nichole, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us just a little bit about your background and what led you to focus on helping women in this particular area of overcoming feelings of doubt and anxiety?
Yeah, so I am a cradle Catholic my whole life. I've grown up in North Dakota. I live in North Dakota, born and raised on a ranch, and always had a strong work ethic. And I started dating my husband in high school. So we're high school sweethearts. We got married shortly after I graduated with my RN degree. And then we very quickly started having babies. So we have 6 girls, and we had them within about 9 years and probably more like 8 years. I was working as a RN full time. I've mostly worked in nursing home or hospice. Hospice has been my main caregiving area, and a little home health mixed in there. So a lot of time went to everybody else, my family, my kids, caring for my patients, and my husband and I, we always flip-flop schedules, so we never had daycare, and so it was a lot also of just passing each other by, not really having time for each other. And then, I mean, this is kind of stereotyping, but I think men are better at just saying what they need and going and doing it. Not all men, but a lot of men, and women are more, no, I need to sacrifice for my family. And so that's what I did. And I thought, okay, I should be happy because this is what I wanted. And I wasn't happy. And then I switched and I worked for a while as a DRE at our local parish. And so I thought that would help because it was part-time at home and part-time working outside the home. And it was not the stress of working in the healthcare setting. And so I thought, oh, this will be great. This will be perfect. This is what I've been looking for. And then it didn't help. So then I went back to working part-time while my husband worked full-time. And I was like, okay, this will be great. That I'll have more time to devote to my family and all the things. And that also didn't help. And so, yeah, just the perpetuating struggle of searching for the next thing to make me happy. And it never happened. And then in 2019, my dad had cancer for 10 years. So basically the whole time we were having children, my dad had cancer and it was prostate cancer, but by the time they found it, it had already gone to his bones. And so he'd been living with that for 10 years. And in the spring of 2019, we knew that the cancer is progressing, treatment weren't working. So he chose hospice. And so I was still working as a hospice nurse at that time, pregnant with our sixth child and running back and forth to help caregiving with my father and working and charting and trying to make sure my husband still got to work and making sure the kids all got, their outfits for sports day and cupcakes for birthdays and all the things. And so he passed away in the end of July of 2018. So my daughter was born, our sixth child was born middle of June. And then so about 6 weeks later, my dad passed away. And so just grief and the struggles that come with that, but also feeling some relief, knowing he wasn't in pain, he wasn't hurting, but also like, okay, things can be more balanced now. And then a few months later, my mom died suddenly. She missed her turn coming home at night. It was dark. It was kind of storming. She couldn't see the road. And so she accidentally drove out onto water. That's right by their driveway there. And the next day, my brother realized she was missing. So calling the authorities, realizing, mom's missing, going out looking, driving around for her, seeing if anybody's seen her. And they realizing, no, when the wind shifted, we realized, oh, there's her tire tracks. Like, she went in the water. And so finding her car took a few days, finding her body took another day or so. And so just the immense grief and trauma that went with that. And then coming out of that and realizing there was a lot of hurt in my marriage from a lot of past hurts. But then also about a month after my mom died, I realized that my husband had been spending huge amounts of money that I was unaware of on credit cards. And so finding that out, and then, the world kind of shut down a few months after that with COVID, and then being together all the time and not having a good marriage, like struggling through a lot of things, grief from my parents' death. And I just realized, okay, like something's got to change. And so I started to lose weight. I lost 40 pounds in 4 months or so. And just realizing like the huge effect that it had on me personally on taking back the control in my life instead of always waiting for other people around me to change for then me to be happy. And so taking back that control in my life, it helped me rely more on God, strengthen my relationship with him. And so I was like, you know what? I want to do this. I want to help other Catholic women, and especially women who work in healthcare is my focus, especially nurses. So I have a soft spot for them, obviously.
You have so much in your story, and to think that you were still raising 6 girls in the midst of all of that. And first of all, thank you for being vulnerable enough to share those stories, because I know it is really hard to open up about that. I have similar past in that my dad also passed from cancer in 2020. He had stage 4 colon cancer. My mom also passed suddenly prior to that. So she passed in 2011, and woke up one morning, fell in the bathroom, and that was kind of it. She had pulmonary embolism. So the grief and the struggles from all of that, I think, can break us and pull us from God, or they can break us and allow us to go to God. And I think it's very evident from the work that you are doing and that you continue to do and that you have done, that you have used that to help pull you or God has used that to pull you closer to him and really make this a part of your formation to do the work that he has called you to do. So that is so incredibly beautiful. I just want to acknowledge that before we go any further. And you had so many breaking points, I think, where you could have made the decision to reach out for help. What was it that was different when you were finally like, enough is enough? I have to do something.
Yeah, I think for me, it was realizing how suddenly your whole world can change. Like with my mom dying. I mean, coupled with like my dad died and then my mom died and then my husband, like with the issues. But it was just like, she missed her turn coming into her driveway. Like 1 minute, less than a minute can change everything, everything for you, everything for the people around you. And that made me kind of reflect and be like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing with my life? There has to be more than just waking up, going to work. And like, I loved my job at the time. I love working for hospice. But it kind of helped me realize that like, is that something that God is calling me to right now? Is it something he might be calling me to later? Like really reflecting on that. And then also I did not like how I looked at the time. I had 6 children and was, not making good food choices. And I really felt physically miserable, like just the food choices I was making. And so, coupled with waking up a lot to nurse a baby and all those things. But really it was more of, I don't even like how I feel in my own skin. How am I going to continue raising a family and doing all these things and dealing with all this grief when I wake up and I don't even like how I feel. So that to me was like the changing point of kind of, okay, I'm going to do something for myself. And for, our whole marriage up to that point, I didn't, I would say I really never took time for myself ever. Like I had signed up for a Bible study, but even that, like if I had a baby, I would bring the baby along to nurse there. I was never doing anything for myself. And so it was realizing, what can I do for myself that I'm going to enjoy, that's going to make me feel good, help fill me up so that I can care for others around me.
What are some of the objections that you find that people run into when they think about caring for themselves?
And that would probably time, right? Like I don't have time. And another one, it can be money, depending on what it is that you think you have to do in order to get self-care. And so that part of my goal is to teach women is it's so simple. It doesn't have to be, oh, I gotta go get a massage and go like get my nails done, which can be expensive. And so it's realizing more like I I want to take 15 minutes at the end of every night to read a book. That's self-care. Or when I get home, you know, the kids can wait 5 more seconds for me to change out of my clothes and get on comfy clothes and fuzzy slippers. And just really like, I love fuzzy slippers. They make me feel good. My feet are always cold. Or setting up my coffee pot the night before. So when I get up, I just push a button and maybe mine's broken where I can set the timer, but set a timer. If you have it, that's amazing. Just something like, okay, that's something I'm doing for my future self. What can I do for my future self is the basic question for self-care. And when you break it down like that, there's really not an objection of the time and the money.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I know for myself, even when I consider getting coaching, because coaches should always be getting coached. And I would say anyone that is working in healthcare, in counseling, in ministry, in teaching, you need to have an output place because you are carrying such an emotional burden, not only from your own home, but from the people that you work with. And you cannot carry that by yourself. You need to be able to process everything that you are intaking, or it is so easy to just start carrying everyone else's emotions on top of your own. That was the number one thing when I started my master's in ministry program. We were required to have a spiritual director throughout our entire class because that was part of the self-care. You cannot do this work unless you have someone else to help you process everything that you're going through along the way. And when we think that we don't have time, you don't have time not to. The time is going to be there and you are going to be so much more productive and happier and not wasting time scrolling on your phone or convincing yourself to crawl out of bed because you're going to feel better and you're going to be better moms and you're going to be better wives because you've just taken that little bit of effort to do the work. And monetarily, I think the same thing. all of the money that you spend binge eating
Mhm.
could very easily go to having someone teach you the tools. Because coaching, you don't need a coach forever. It's great if you have one to consistently check in with, but even if you can meet with one a few times to develop some of the skills and tools and mindset to just process things is
Yeah.
so huge.
Yeah. And I also think that a lot of people, another kind of objection that I hear is like, well, I have a good support system, which is good. That's amazing. But there really is a difference between venting to a friend and getting coached and seeking somebody to really like, kind of poke holes in the story that you want to tell yourself of like, hey, well, this was horrible. That like it's good to vent, obviously, and that's great.
Mhm.
But it really is a whole nother shift. And it really is more of reflection and self-care to dive deeper with somebody and somebody who's neutral and not going to kind of jump on your pity bandwagon.
Exactly. They're not gonna jump in the pool and swim around with you and tell you, "Oh, you're right. That person is awful. That coworker should just
Yeah.
not be there," or they're not gonna seek vindication for you. They're going to help you a coach is going to help you take a step back and say, "Okay, really? Is this what happened? And what is in your control? What is not in your control?" They're gonna help you gain some perspective, which I think is super helpful. I know for me, I always felt like I don't need help. Or I'm going to figure this out on my own. Yes, it would be great to have someone, but I don't like asking for help. I don't want to be vulnerable. I would have never said that out loud, but interiorly, that's what I was thinking. What are some of the signs that someone is struggling with doubt or inadequacy that might be signals, hey, maybe it's time to think about asking for help? And we're not saying you need to go to counseling. Coaching, I think, is something that can help us so that we don't get to the point where we have to have therapy. You can definitely do both, I think, alongside of one another. And a lot of people do. They have slightly different entry points and end goals. But maybe what are some signs that you see?
I think for one, if you have a pulse and you're breathing, I think it's a good time to reach out and get some help because we're all human, and so i- it's natural to have self-doubt, to feel like you're an imposter, to feel like, especially now in the world we live in, where everything that's put in front of us looks perfect. Like every social media account, every Instagram, and like there's the ones that then like they brand on making themselves look like a hot mess also. But then it's almost like, oh my gosh, even that person, they have millions of followers and they're still living a great life off being a hot mess. I must be totally messing up then. And so I think it's just to realize the comparison that does come in because we're human and we're going to compare ourselves, and coaching just helps you kind of quiet that down and realize that wherever you're at is just perfectly where you're meant to be. But taking that and then moving forward and changing if you want to, if you choose to. And, with counseling, like I like to tell people a lot of times that like counseling therapy, like again, are wonderful tools and they're amazing. And those are more for, let's use the athlete analogy of if you've broken a bone. Okay, well, you're gonna go and get help to heal and set it right because something's broken. Well, coaching takes that after you've, broken the bone, or maybe you've never broken a bone, but you just want to get stronger. And as an athlete, you want to fine tune your sport and learn how to move a little bit better and faster. That's what coaching does, is it helps you see, okay, this is where I'm at. And yeah, things aren't completely broken. They might be like with me where things were kind of really still starting to go off the rail. But okay, I want something different. I'm looking for a change. And I think, again, like as humans, I think there is a longing in all of us to strive for that, right? Because we're made for heaven. And so we're striving for that. And yet we often fail. And so coach helps you just see that like that's normal, that it's okay, that to get up again and try again, and they believe in you on the days that you can't believe in yourself.
I love that. I agree. I think coaching for me has been something that has reignited my purpose and given me hope. And it helps me to not quit on the days when I want to quit. And even when I do quit, it's given me the tools and the mindset to just be able to restart sooner and not sit and wallow for a week or two or even a day or two. It's like, okay, this happened. It's not a problem. Let's just restart. And I wasn't able to do that. I could do that, but a lot of times I was doing it out of obligation and I was shoving down all the emotions. And now I think with coaching, as you know, we're able to process those emotions and we don't just shove away all of the ones that we think we're not supposed to feel. We acknowledge that we're feeling them and then we just move on and it's okay.
Yeah. And it's so funny because we spend so much time not wanting to feel the feelings because we think that'll make us feel bad. But coaching, again, it gives you the freedom to see, like, oh, I can feel those feelings. And like, if you feel better so much faster. And it just opens up a whole world where it's like, oh, wait, what? I don't have to be stuck in shame and guilt and spiral for a month or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I give myself a day and I allow that day. I give myself that permission and I move forward. Like with my marriage, we still have fights, obviously. We still struggle. We still are not perfect. We're still human. But when we do have a discussion or a bad day, it's a day or two instead of 2 or 3 weeks. And one thing that I've found through this also is, which is fascinating but makes total sense, is that most nurses marry somebody who has an addiction. A lot of times it's alcohol. But I mean, it makes total sense because we want to fix people and we want to make people better. And so that alone, like just hearing that made me realize like, oh my gosh, like that makes total sense. Yes, that's 100% me. And realizing again, like I can't change him, but how am I showing up and what can I change within me that then what I'm doing and how I show up ultimately does bring him around.
Yeah, I love you said earlier, even we can be happy even if other people don't change. That is huge. That is freedom. The understanding that we can be happy even if our husband leaves the trash on the counter every single day for the rest of our marriage. We can be happy even if we have a snappy coworker who criticizes our work and talks about us behind our back. We can be happy if other people are tearing us down. We can be happy if our kids throw tantrums.
Mhm.
We don't have to fall apart. We can be happy in those situations and we can maintain a sense of calm. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to be able to do it 100% of the time, but we can learn to do it more often. I'm curious if you're willing to share when you first started coaching, and I really just want people to understand the transformation that happens. When you first started coaching, what was your first big aha moment where you're like, oh, I can start doing this right now and already things feel better?
Yeah, I think it was so I got my coaching certification through the life coach school through so it's Brooke Castillo is the gal who, founded it, runs it. And she's not Catholic, it's very secular. And so you kind of have to weed through some of those things. But when she made the comparison of on 9/11, okay, like when the Twin Towers were going down, and for us, like most Americans, right? Like we thought that day we're the good guys, right? We were sad, this was tragic. And she said, but the people who crashed into the World Trade Centers, they also thought they were the good guys. They thought that this was something that was great and they were excited and they were happy that they accomplished this. So you take the same circumstance and it's just the thoughts that people have about that makes how you're showing up and how you're feeling and how you're acting. And for me, it's such a crazy analogy. Like thousands of people died, people were injured, people that were the firefighter, like the first responders, they're still suffering to this day because they're breathing and all the things that happen. And to me, it's just like, how could somebody be happy? But it's true, right? Because they accomplished their goal. And so it was just such an eye-opening analogy or example where it's like, wow, that is crazy. That a circumstance is neutral, and it's not until we give a thought to it that then we have a feeling and we act, and that's how we show up. And I think for me, it was also taking the example of my mom dying, because she had died like that night. We didn't even know she was missing till the next morning. So within those hours, I had no thoughts about it. Right. And you could argue, well, it's because you weren't aware. But the fact is, my mom died and I didn't give a thought to it because, right, I wasn't thinking about it. And then as soon as I knew, it was like, oh, I gave thoughts to it. And of course, you want to feel sad and all that. Like, emotions are good. Emotions are a good thing. But it really gave me then that control of, how do I want to keep showing up with that? Do I want to dwell in those thoughts? Some days, right? Some days when it's hard, and some days when I'm missing her a lot and missing both my parents. Some days I do want to just allow that and feel sad. But otherwise, I want to take that, and I want to live this life to the best ability that I can and with the time that God has given me. And so what thoughts am I choosing to come out of that and get through that and cope with that and lead my girls through that and strive to be a better wife and spouse and coworker?
Yeah, I love this idea of same circumstances, different results. And we get different results based off of what we're thinking and what we allow ourselves to think, because the thoughts that are running through our head over and over again that become beliefs, we're choosing to keep those thoughts and allowing them to become beliefs about ourselves. And most of them are not true. If those beliefs are not something that God would say about you, then they are not part of your identity. They are things that you have taken on to become this false identity. And so if you look at two people, again, who have lost their parents compared to someone else who has also lost their parents, okay, similar circumstances, the difference between the person who becomes an addict and the person who continues to live a successful life is their thoughts about the situation. Now, obviously, addiction, there's a lot more to that, right, than just the choice to be an addict. But it really does come back to, what are our thoughts about our circumstance and how are we choosing to move forward? The same if you were looking at two people in business. The person who has the successful business has different thoughts about themselves and their capabilities to run that business than the other person. Of course, they obviously have different skill sets as well, but both are capable of being successful.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree.
And you talking about just recognizing, for someone who's never lost someone in their life, it really does shift your lens on what things we can start to let go of, things that we think are so essential. And then you have that loss and you realize our time is limited. And why am I stressing over this thing? I think for me, I remember after my dad died, I wrote a blog and I talked about the number 59. That's the average age of my parents' lifespan, and thinking, okay, if I only had until the age of 59, that's not a lot of time to accomplish all the things that I want to accomplish in my life. And I don't even know, that's not even guaranteed.
Mhm.
So I love this idea of, if you were to once a week or even once a month, just say, okay, if I only had this year or I only had this month, what are the things that I want to accomplish in my life? And am I doing the things that I need to do to get there?
Mhm. Yeah. And I often think of, like, Mother Teresa, right? Because if she would have looked at all the millions of people in front of her, she would have never began. But she just focused on the one day, the one person in front of her, the one step. And so I think about her a lot, like in this ministry of coaching, is like, there's so many people that need our help, but showing up for the people in front of you, like just for today, like, okay, Lord, like, what are you asking me for today? And I think that that's helpful in being a nurse and in working in healthcare. Like, okay, Lord, like, you know, 'cause the schedules change, right? And you being a teacher,
Mm.
things come up, the day does not go as it planned. Like, you have this great plan. You're like, okay, this this is how my day's gonna go. This is my plan. This is how it's gonna work. And then it doesn't. And you maybe have an admission or, from in my case, like if there was a patient that all of a sudden started declining and you got to go see them, and it just can throw you off. But if you recenter on Christ and just be like, okay, Lord, like you're allowing this to happen. Please allow me to show up how you're asking me to show up in this moment and just focus on that instead of the broad scheme. Like this has got to get done today, and this kid needs this, and this one needs that, and this permission form needs to get in, and I got to pay for that. Like, just what's in front of me in this moment right now.
Yeah. I believe it was Mother Teresa who talks about coming to the Lord as a blank canvas. And so instead of coming to prayer and saying, okay, Lord, here's my painting and here's my brush and here's the colors that I want you to use, and can you just perfect this image today? Give him a blank canvas and let him decide, Lord, what do you want to do with this today?
Yeah. And
And
and it's
oh,
hard. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy to be like, okay, here I am, a blank canvas. It's hard, which again I think is just natural. We want to control our circumstance and everything around us. But again, that's where I believe coaching has come in for me immensely. And I've seen it in my clients that I have, like just realizing how it is a simple thing. It's not easy, but it is simple.
yes, 100%. It's not easy, but it is simple, and you don't have to do it alone. In fact, you shouldn't do it alone because we have infinite capacity for self-delusion,
Mhm.
and we need someone else to help us kind of see the full picture. When things are feeling crazy, we feel like we're failing. What are some things that we can let go of? What are some things you've been able to let go of, whether it's with your kids or in your job or in your relationship, in your marriage? What are some things that you've let go of throughout this
Yeah.
process? Hey friends, it's Kylie, and I help high achieving Catholic women who feel unfulfilled get clear on where God is calling them and equip them with the resources to get there. Women who work with me come in with self doubt and worry that their dreams are unattainable in this season. They feel bogged down by the day to day, the work obligations, the home obligations, the financial obligations. But they leave feeling confident that they can move forward right now in freedom. They believe more fully that they are enough just as they are. Now is the perfect time to take advantage of my absolutely free confidence and clarity calls. Just click the link in the show notes and I will see you there.
Yeah. And so I like to tell my clients and myself also to remember the ABCs, like awareness, breathing, and control. So first of all, it's to be aware of, okay, I'm having a stress response right now, right? Like a lot of times for me, it's if I think my husband is being secretive about something, that ignites a stress response. It's also if it's storming outside, I get a big stress response. I feel like I can't keep my family safe. Also, when my kids all come in the door at 4 p.m. when they get dropped off on the bus and everybody at once talking, and that is a stress state for me. And so just to acknowledge that and bring awareness to that, and then to calm down, breathe, right? Calm down, just breathe, and then tell yourself a few simple statements in your mind. Like I like to tell myself, I am safe and I am loved. And I always like to know I'm safe. I am safe. And then say, okay, like to bring it to control, like what can I control in this moment? And obviously we can't control anything, right? Like God is in control, but more tangibly, I know now that 4 p.m. can start a stress response. So I take a few minutes before they get home. I have my snack. I kind of pause and rest. And otherwise, I would find myself when they come in the door, just like eating whatever, they're having for snack and overeating on it, and then snacking all the way through making supper and then eating supper, of course. And then by 7 o'clock, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel miserable and I'm so full. Okay, well, what's in my control? I know that when they come home at 4 p.m., it helps for me to put down my phone and put that aside, because if I'm trying to, buffer, scroll up, like try to find some dopamine and scroll on Facebook as they're all attacking me and coming at me, like it feels horrible and it's overwhelming. And then I'm annoyed that they're interrupting my scrolling and answering an email or whatever it may be. And so putting my phone down, that helps. And just finding those simple things along the way of realizing, okay, this causes me a stress response. Okay, I'm gonna breathe through that. And how do I want to show up? Because I do have control over that. I have control over my thoughts and my actions. And those are really truly the only things that we can control in life. But how do I want to show up with that? How do I want to show up when my husband and I are having a hard day and, I'm really stressed out? Does it do good to yell and scream and cry and storm off? No. So how do I want to show up? I want to breathe my way through it. Ask Jesus, like, hey, please give me the knowledge if I should speak up, if I should just let it go. What else to approach him calmly, to ask him questions of where he's coming from. Because most of the time our husbands love us, right? And they want to show up in love for us. A lot of times, for my husband and I especially, we have very different love languages. We have very different everything. So seeing where he's coming from, because he always is coming from a place of, I was doing it for you. And so, okay, that's in my control to ask the question, to show up calmly, and to not let things spiral. Also, if I see, okay, I didn't respond how I wanted to when the kids came home, okay, well, I don't need to dwell in that. I can just see that, say, okay, that's fine. And then what can I control next time?
Yeah. I love that you are peeling back what causes the stress response instead of just focusing on the stress response in the moment. This has been pivotal for me in my own life. And as I've continued to grow in it over the last probably 15 years since I first really learned about it. And it might be that moment where you're in the car and you're late getting the kids to school and you're stressed out and you're starting to snap at them. Well, if you would have listened the first time, right, we start blaming other people. Well,
Mhm.
let's peel it back. Okay. Did my kids put on their shoes the first time I asked them? No. But is that really what's bothering me? What happened before they didn't put their shoes on? Because really, even if I had to ask them 2 or 3 times, did it take them that long to finally get their shoes on? Did I turn off the TV when they didn't do it the first time? What did I do? And then going back even further, okay, I didn't wake them up early enough. Because why? Well, I press snooze. Well, why? Because I stayed up too late last night. Why? And just feeling it back, and really the frustration with other people is honestly almost always frustration with myself for something that I could have done differently. And I can beat myself up about that, or I can just say, okay, tonight I'm going to set a boundary and I'm going to go to bed by 9:30
Mhm.
so that I can get up when my alarm goes off at 4:30.
Yeah.
So just working it backwards to actually see what is the real problem here. Is it that the kids didn't get their shoes on and now we're running late? Or is it that I stayed up too late, I slept in, I'm extra cranky, and I didn't give them enough time for what I know creates a successful morning routine for them and what they need?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And that's, yeah, because I have one client that that was almost like verbatim, like exactly how I led her through, where like her mornings were hectic. And as you peeled it back, it was because she was staying up later because she felt like that was her only time that she got. And then she was late going to bed. Well, then she hit the snooze. And then when she got up, she scrolled on Facebook for a while, and it just created chaos, right? But like
Mhm.
once she recognized that, it's like, oh, I just don't need to look at Facebook in the morning. I can go to bed 15 minutes earlier. I can read before I go to bed to calm my mind down instead of, staying up and watching a show or scrolling on my phone again. So yeah, I think just really being aware of the very simple things that are causing us chaos in our life.
Yeah. You use the ABC model. I love St. Ignatius of Loyola with discernment of spirits. He always says, be aware, understand, and take action. And we can use those same cues when we are looking at the psychological aspect of our thoughts and the patterns. So just like you said, being aware of what is going on, understanding what the source of those things are. Are these thoughts coming from myself? Are they coming from God? Are they coming from somewhere else? Is it coming from something someone else told me and now I feel like I'm a failure because they made a comment about my messy car and now I'm taking that to heart because I feel like I'm a bad mom? And then
Mm.
taking action on what is actually true and good and what is not, and taking the action to do the good thing. And then just repeating it. What's the pattern here? How can I prevent it the next time from escalating quite so much? So I love your ABC model too: awareness, breathing, and control, in case someone missed it the first time. Okay. When we're struggling, it often really does feel like if we just had more help or more time or more financial resources, things would be okay. For the woman that is in that place right now, feeling those things and having those thoughts, what tools or resources aside from the ABC method do you recommend? Is there anything else?
Well, I always recommend, of course, hire yourself a coach. But I do think that if you just list out the facts of the situation, like that has been so helpful to me personally, because again, our mind likes to tell us all of these things that are not true. And so if you're like, okay, I have this much money in my bank account, this is what's coming up, and then take those facts and get curious, right? We often just get stuck in, well, this is how we've always done it. This is all we know. Okay, well, how can I bring in more income? What could I do to get $300 more dollars? What could I do to get $600 more dollars? A lot of us have an abundance of stuff. So maybe it's just simply listing a few things on, Facebook, buy, sell, trade page or marketplace or, whatever it may be. Maybe it is, okay, I'm short on time and I keep telling myself I don't have time. Okay, well, maybe you need to write out during the day how much time you spend worrying about your time, how much time you spend on your phone that's not for work or for anything. It's just simply being on your phone to check out, how much time you spend in front of the TV, how much we all have way more time than we think. And I love when you break it down and you look at your time, how much availability we have. We're just choosing to spend it a different way, even if we aren't consciously choosing that. Like we're just using our time up, whether we know it or not. And so I always like to say, list out as much facts as you possibly can. And again, don't give them adjectives, don't describe, just a fact. If it was in a court of law, could you prove that?
Mm-hmm.
And just, okay, this is my fact. This is what I'm working with. And then, okay, now that I directly see what I'm working with, how can I work with it better? How can I make it easier for myself? How can I find more time? And again, it's not more time, right? It's just, how can I use my time more productively, more wisely?
Yeah, I love just this thought. I don't have enough time in general. If we break down that sentence, the only fact in that sentence is time. Like time exists. That's the only fact. I don't have enough is not a fact. And if you were to ask the client, myself sometimes even being the client, how much time do you need? We usually have no idea how much time we actually need. And when we map out how much time we actually need, we're like, oh, yeah, I have actually plenty of time. I've been stressing out over nothing.
Yeah. Yep. And I love that time, we all get the same amount, right? We all get 24 hours in a day. And so I love that it's not like money where we can tell ourselves all these lies about money and we can more easily believe it because we see somebody who has this much money and somebody who has this much and you compare each other, which again are all your thoughts and that's not true. But with time, we all have 24 hours in a day. And so you can't argue that Elon Musk has 48 hours in a day because he doesn't. He has the exact same amount of time you do. And so I love time and I love how we like to have the delusion of there's not enough time.
Yeah. And for anyone whose brain just went to, yeah, well, he has the same amount of time, but he has all this other help, because that's what your brain is naturally going to want to do. Going to want to make an excuse.
Yeah.
Again, just recognize that that is happening. Recognize that it's like the but statement. I talked about this in the last podcast episode of where we're already starting to make excuses.
Yep.
We don't have to do that. It's natural to do that, but just recognize that it's happening. And okay, yes, he does have different kinds of help. He also has different types of tasks that require different kinds of help. So we don't need to compare. If God asks us to do something, he will give us the time and the resources to do it. And if he doesn't, then let's just reassess. Did he actually ask me to do that today?
Yeah.
Because he probably didn't. Because if he did, he would have given you what you needed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
recognizing that.
Yeah. I love telling myself everything that needs to get done today will get done.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes when we are in this state where we feel like we're failing or the world's crumbling around us, even when we do good things, we feel like we don't deserve those good things, or like we still didn't do it well enough. When those thoughts creep in, what do you do to help yourself?
Yeah. That's a good one because I was the queen of this. Working as a hospice nurse, everybody tells you, "Oh, this is such amazing work. Oh, I don't know how you do it. Oh, and you have 6 kids." And I felt like a failure all the time. All the time. I was failing at everything. And I think, again, a big change for me was to cut out that belief that by putting myself down would help me move forward in life. It would help me do more. It would help me lose the weight when it doesn't. It's just putting yourself down all the time. And it's exhausting. It's mentally draining. It's physically exhausting. You get tired from doing that all the time. And so again, to realize that for one, it's okay to acknowledge your wins. It's okay just because you're like, yeah, thanks. I do look good today. Like, I feel good about myself. That's not saying that the person next to you doesn't look good. It's just acknowledging little things slowly about yourself. And it takes some time and some practice. And again, I'm from the Midwest. So it's very much, if somebody gives you a compliment, it's very much, oh, well, this is so old. Like you want to instantly tell them how they shouldn't be complimenting you.
I am
Instead of just
dying
saying,
laughing
"Thank you."
because as soon as you said someone tells you how nice you look, I thought of the same thing. The Midwest compliment and how we can't take it. We're going to justify, oh, well, I got this for $5 at Goodwill. Or,
Yes.
yeah, we always come up with some reason to downplay the compliment.
Yes. And so I started seeing that in other people, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing that all the time. And not even when people say things to me, I'm doing that all the time, just across the board. If the kids finally liked a supper that I made and they all liked it, and my husband's like, oh, look, everybody's eating good. Well, yeah, but they didn't eat good the last 5 meals. So, I must not be doing something right. Like, just to say thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I enjoy it too. I'm glad they all enjoy it. Okay, I'll put a star next to this one. To just realize that it's okay to acknowledge your win. Like that has been a really big game changer for me, is to acknowledge a win. And even when you think you're failing, to find the win in it. Like the other day I was struggling with my podcast, and there was an update on my podcast host thing, and it took me time, but it took me such a little time. It took me maybe an hour to figure it out. Where when I was first starting, that would have taken me weeks, and I would have just quit, and I wouldn't have posted for that week, and I would have just been like, well, that's it. I'm a failure. I can't, I just can't do it. Everything around me is failing. Instead, this time I'm like, wow, look at how fast I did that. Yeah, it was hard, and I had to search on YouTube videos to figure it out, and I had to Google a couple of things, but look at how much I've grown in just 6 months to figure that out that fast. Look at how good I did. And so just to recognize the wins, even when it feels like a fail.
And teaching your brain, this is so important to teach your brain, looking at the dinner comparison that you talked about, tell your brain, hey, I can cook a dinner that my kids love. And that makes it feel safe to cook dinner again for your kids and not expect that they're going to hate it or pick it apart. And the more that we do that, the more that we just rewire our brains that things are safe and that even if we fail, it's still safe. Everything works out okay. Our children are still alive and we're able to go back and cook dinner again the next day. That is so important because the natural inclination is just like you said, to tear ourselves apart. I remember when I finished my master's degree and I didn't want to go to my graduation because I was in the middle of teaching and it felt like I can't fit this in. It's too stressful. It's going to be too stressful to go. And I just remember the head of my program reminding us of how important it was to celebrate all that we had worked for and all of those incredibly late nights and the stress and taking classes while you're pregnant and writing papers till 2 a.m. while you're teaching a full-time job. We have to acknowledge that that was really hard work and that we did it.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I think too, especially what I've found is like being a mom, we want to always tell ourselves what a bad mom we're being. And I mean, maybe some women don't feel that way and they're just like naturally, no, I'm a really good mom. That has never come easy for me. I always am like, oh my gosh, look at all the ways I'm failing at that. But I think, a win can just even be like, I haven't left. I'm still showing up. Because there are moms that do that, right? Sadly, that is a reality of the world. And so just say, no, I'm still showing up. I haven't quit cooking supper. I'm still trying. Still trying to find things that everybody likes. And I'm trying to listen to them have meltdowns at the end of the day when it's bedtime. I'm trying, right? I am trying. And I'm learning. And I'm trying and I'm learning have been really big game changers for me to tell myself, because it is easy to constantly tell yourself how bad you're doing and how much you're failing instead of, no, look, I'm trying. I'm trying.
Yeah. I always tell moms, bad moms don't worry about being bad moms. So if you're stressing that you're a bad mom, you're probably doing something right. So look for all those right things that you're actually doing and build on those. As we close, I always ask my guests to share a prayer tip or a scripture verse. So the scripture verse that you gave me is John chapter 15, verse 1. I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not remain in me, he is like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. What does that verse mean to you?
Yeah, for me, the part where it's like, apart from me, you can do nothing. And I think that's especially important working, being a nurse, working in healthcare, just to remember why we're doing that work, right? We're doing that work because we felt called to it. We're doing that work because we want to help people. And without Jesus, it's just work. And it feels so heavy and so hard and so stressful and so overwhelming. But if you give it to the Lord, like it's much easier. Again, it's not easy. We'll say it's hard, but it's simple to just keep coming back to him. And I also, for me personally, this past Lent, I started doing Lectio Divina every day. And now that Lent is done, I can't say I do it every day, but I do try. It really does help ground me. It helps keep me rooted in scripture and to remember that all of the stress, the gossip, all the busyness of days, it just really is nothing. It's just a blip in the whole span of things. And to lean on the Lord through that.
Yeah, I love that. Without God, it's the work without the joy is what I think of. It's still the same hard.
Yeah.
You're missing the joy that comes from the understanding that all of this is growing you and forming you, and it makes it significantly more difficult to recognize all the beautiful pieces that are in that chaos and in that busyness of kids and work and and helping people.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here. This has been a joy and a pleasure. Where can everyone find you?
CatholicNurseCoach.com is my website and has all the links for booking a free call, or I have a support group that with nurses that we meet twice a month where you can get the information for that as well.
Awesome. I will link those in the show notes and hope to see you guys back here next week. Beautiful souls, thank you again for journeying with me. If you have been blessed by this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your social media stories, and don't forget to tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Kylie M. Hine. Stay persistent in prayer, protect your peace, and as always, share the light of Christ with everyone around you.